Welcome. I think we have a very good audience already, and it's 3 after the hour. So I just want to welcome everyone. Welcome to this virtual international book launch. My name is Tendai Bwanya, and I'm here because I'm Phil's friend. That's what maybe my qualification is. And I really want to thank you because we're not taking this time for granted, which you have set aside. I wanted to say good morning. Then I realized in Sydney, it's actually evening. I'm in the UK myself. So I think given it's an international one, I'll say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. So just to give you a bit of an overview of how we're going to run this session, and then we will jump straight into it. We will have Phil talk about the book himself. We will hear from him talking about the actual stories that he has entitled the book. After Phil has talked about that, we will ask him some questions. I've got some questions which I've prepared here actually to ask him about the book itself. And when we have finished that session, there's somebody who has been significant to the journey as well, Evie. And Evie will come and give us a part of the story about how the book came into being and her support in that area. We will take audience questions as well. So if you are here, you have read the book, or you've got questions, please put the questions in the chat as Phil will be talking through this book. And what we will also do is we will invite someone who is going to talk about the impact that Phil's work has had on him and what they've gone on also to achieve in their own career. And then we will take more questions from the audience. What we want to do with this session is we want as many questions as possible, especially from people who have read the book. If you've got, a number of questions, please raise them. But I need to also give you a few admin elements before we go into the detail. If you have read the book, we would like to encourage you to put the reviews on Amazon. It does make a difference. It does indicate for others who have not read the book, the actual impact it has had on you. So please put your reviews on Amazon. There's a prize here, whether I should call it a prize or a reward. The first 15 people who put their reviews on Amazon will actually get autographed copies from Phil. So don't put your reviews before you've read the book, but read the book first and actually put your reviews so that it's helpful to do that. And then in this session, what we are also going to do is, because this session is being recorded, we're going to capture some of the moments. So we thought at the peak audience, maybe when we're in the middle of the session, we are just going to pause. We encourage people to put their cameras on. I'll give you a cue, and then we can take a screenshot so that when it's posted and when we're talking about the event, it's easier to see people, maybe rather than numbers or other pictures that are still pictures. And then the links to Phil's website, the links to the Amazon where the book is, and any other links that will be relevant and other information will also be posted in the chat. So keep your eyes on the chat because there will be helpful information within that. So that's our way with the admin. And for the people that are joining us again, I want to extend my welcome. Now, I want to welcome Phil and, talk about the book. Now, I've got the book right with me here, and maybe I should actually give a story before I welcome Phil. When I bought this book and it arrived in my house, I've got 3 daughters, and my second one is 12. She bought the book and she read it in less than 24 hours. I had been struggling to tell her how I grew up in Zimbabwe and how things were like, and Phil did the job for me. So if you are in my situation and you want them to understand what it is like, Phil has done the job for you. Just give them the book. But Phil is a great friend, but also he has done amazing things. And most of you maybe will know him as the chief executive of the Cyber Leadership Institute. And he has done a lot of things, even before he got to the Cyber Leadership Institute. And he has won multiple global awards. And I will not go into too much detail about all of them. But, one of the impressive ones for me was when he talked about his journey where he received an award for the article he had wrote for ISACA when he was in Chicago. and how he has shared the stage with some of the most significant people in the cybersecurity space. And he has been telling his story, but not only that, but the technical aspects as well. His achievements have also been recognized in the African diaspora environment about some of the, the 100 significant people of African descent who have actually made a difference. And Phil has been one of those people. Some of you will be aware of his book again, The 5 Anchors of Cyber, Resilience. And what that book has achieved is amazing. Recently in the UK, it was actually nominated for a prize in 2021. And that book has been mentioned in many areas as a handbook that is essential for every cyber security professional. So that's Phil for you. And I would like to invite Phil to join us and give us his own version of the obstacles. Phil, welcome.
Wow. Wow, thank you so much, Big Brother Tendai. Tendai and myself, we come a long way. I've never met him in person, but he comes from Mondoro, and he also went through Deloitte Harare, and we connected on LinkedIn. We became great friends. Really appreciate your very kind and warm introduction. I was telling the guys I was with here, just preparing for the event, that, in as much as I have published my second book, I'm still scared. I feel very anxious about this event, and I've spoken at so many conferences, but that again is the same mindset that has carried me through, the last 6 years. And I start off maybe by just sharing my journey. I arrived here in Australia back in 2007. I was a young looking African guy, and, I was just coming into a foreign land. I was 27 years old. I was full of ambition. I wanted to take on the world. But little did I realize that, the obstacles that I had managed to overcome in the savannah and, in Harare ghettos, and, running 23 kilometers to school, living in a dilapidated place with no windows, with no running water, with a makeshift unlockable door, had not really prepared me for the challenges that I was going to face here in Australia. I was joining PwC as a senior consultant then back in 2007. But my first 3.5 years here in Australia were tremendously difficult. The struggle to belong, the familial and the friendly bonds that I had built over 27 years back in Zimbabwe. I came here, I tell everyone my salary had increased by maybe more than 7,000%. Which really surprises people. But, my salary was just about $100 when I was back in Zimbabwe. So it was very easy. The upside felt unkept. But, that constant struggle to belong, and the deeply rooted belief that my odds to succeed here in Sydney as a young looking African man were razor thin, proved quite overwhelming. So, in the summer of 2011, I sold my furniture, I terminated my lease, I resigned from my role in PwC and flew back to Harare with no intention of coming back to Australia. Fortunately, as fate would have it, my negotiations in Zimbabwe fell through. I was going to join Ernst & Young as a senior manager, and then I came back to Australia. And then, in the intervening years, I changed jobs and moved careers. But the big change came towards the end of 2014, when I decided to take my career and my life into my own hands. I wrote a long list of things that I considered as obstacles. And then I relabeled each and every one of them into excuses. And for me, that was, the profound and the life-changing moment when I decided to radically reconfigure my thought patterns. I decided to, do things that were difficult. That's why I was telling you, I'm still feeling anxious now, but that's exactly become my mantra, is to do the hard things. to step into the unknown. When I came here, there were not many people who looked like me, who were doing things that I aspired to become. I wanted to become a technology executive in one of those big banks. I wanted to speak at conferences. I wanted to write thought leadership across, respected magazines, but there was no relatable examples within my space. So I decided to just, pave my own paths into the woods. And Tendai has spoken about, how that radical change in mindset, accelerated my career. I started writing, my articles started getting published all over the world. And in 2018, I managed to publish my first book beyond my wildest of expectations. But then, something was always lingering around my mind. I realized that the African story, especially for some of us who grew up in the rugged, across the rugged savanna plains, that story was never told. When I was writing my memoir, which took me, 3.5 months, at first I thought I was going to write this book for 6 months. But then I discovered the process was very difficult. Excavating those memories when I was a kid, running to school, living in the township, running across the ghetto in Budiriro and Zivarasekwa, it was very difficult, let alone translating it into words that would inspire someone to read a book that's 258 pages. So anyway, I stuck at it. The first drafts were weak, they were rambling, and they were all over the place, but I stuck at it because for me, it was very important to tell that African story. As I was reading my book, I read so many books. I read more than 30 memoirs, a lot of them from Africa. And I realized that a lot of memoirs that were written from Zimbabwe were actually written by white Zimbabweans who had migrated into the UK or to Australia. They'd shared their experiences through the written word. In our tradition, we do share, stories, but it's mostly oral tradition. So I realized that it was very important for me to write this story, to tell people how, so this book is not just about myself, it's about the young and ambitious kid back in the village in Africa, running to school every day, tilling the fields to get a few dollars to buy a school uniform, going through a lot of challenges in the hope of creating a better life for themselves and for the future generations. So, I stuck at it. I got help from so many people who a lot of them are on the Zoom call. It's very difficult for me to mention them one by one, but, I am incredibly grateful for everyone who put in a lot of effort to get me to publish this book. Why did I call it the gift of obstacles? I realized that, there were several moments in my life, starting off in my prologue where I remember my last savannah fight with a boy called Nduna, who kicked, the hell out of me, and I lost that fight. That was the first obstacle that I remember back then. I moved into the growth point. The place that I lived was unlivable. But for me, that situation became a blessing because when everyone else was tuning to the TV to watch wrestling, to watch Ezom Gido, and to watch the English Premier League, I had nothing to do. And, the solitude that my place, brought to me could have engulfed my young mind. So I ran back to school and I turned my proverbial lemon into lemonade. And there's this really powerful quote that I love from a lady called Mary Oliver, who said, "Someone I love once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to realize that again was a gift." And that's exactly what has become to my life. Every day, I've got bottomless ambition. There's so many things that I want to achieve in my life. A lot of people come to me and say, "Oh, you've published 2 books in the last 3 years. What's next?" I'm just starting, There's another powerful quote that drives me every day, which say, the end of our exploring is to come back to the place where we started and know that it's for the first time. So anyway, I realized that, all the tremendous, challenges that I faced throughout my life have become what someone calls the blessing of hardship, which I call the gift of obstacles. So why does my story matter? In conclusion, it really matters because it's very important for every one of us on this Zoom call to realize that if a barefooted boy like me from Mondoro, when I went to A level at Goromons, I got 11 points. Everyone who went to A level in Zimbabwe know that with 11 points, your life is almost doomed. You're either going to go to a teacher's college or do something, but the competition is so stiff, it's very difficult. So my point is, if a barefooted boy who got 11 points at A level can, rise past so many obstacles in my life and manage to author 2 best-selling books in the last 3 years and achieve so many other things that I have achieved, it's very important for each of us to remember that all of us can, push through seemingly insurmountable obstacles as long as we believe and we keep acting even in the face of adversity. And this is my closing remark. For me, it was very important to realize that for me to achieve, whatever is stopping me from achieving what I want, it is not my spouse, it's not my kids, it's not my in-laws, it's not my family, it's not my boss, it's not racism. It's very important for us to remember that we are only restricted by the bounds of our own belief systems. And once I started reconfiguring my mind, magic happened, because we are only restricted by the bounds of our own thought processes, because as a man thinketh, so he is. So that's why I call this book The Gift of Obstacles, because looking back, I don't wish anyone to go through what I went through, but looking back, I now realize as I start joining dots that, all those obstacles have built, a mindset and, this insatiable desire for continuous self-improvement. And that's why I called it The Gift of Obstacles. And thank you, everyone who've come here to support my story and to support my journey. Over to you, Big Brother Tendai.
Wow. Thanks very much, Phil, for sharing your story there. I can still see the passion, in the, I think we can sense it. We can sense that you are just getting started, because we can feel it as you speak. And I think, it's such a powerful conviction and a challenge to all of us, because I guess we also have our own challenges and insurmountable mountains, seemingly, that we need to overcome. But I want to ask you some questions, Phil, because I have read the book and I have known you. We have had some discussions. And, one of the breakthroughs in my view that came was when you wrote that article that took you so long, which you then sent to the ISACA. That was a technical article, right? About, cyber. Then you wrote the book, your first book, which was a bestseller, was about cyber, and it was a technical book again. And in your book, you talk about how technical we are. So you were actually within your technical space. But then this second book is a totally different book. It's a memoir.
Yeah.
You're just getting started. So why this book and why now?
Yeah, a really great question. So I always tell people that when I got my first ever award back in 2016, I was very fortunate. ISACA Sydney, which is an organization that was founded back in 1976. They were celebrating their 40th anniversary. And at a black tie event in downtown Sydney, I was the only African looking person there, which is often the case. Because there's not many of us here, especially back then. I was very humbled to receive their first ever best governance of the year professional. In honor of the contributions that I was making at a global scale to the field of IT governance and cybersecurity. I decided to write my story and share my story on LinkedIn. And this is something that I've shared a few times. The first words that I put in there is I got my first pair of shoes when I was 12, and I moved out to rent at the age of 14. The place that I lived had no running water, everything that I've spoken about. I used to run 23 kilometers to school one way. I deleted that about 6 times. And everyone, who grew up in challenging situations would easily understand. When I grew up, poverty was a source of shame. No one wanted to play with the poor boy. Even if you tried to talk to a girl, they would easily shun you because you are the poor boy. So poverty, there was nothing glorious about poverty. So, I was really scared. I didn't know how the world will react to my story, which started with so much suffering, which I, was starting to turn around. Eventually, I gathered the courage and I clicked post and I went to bed because I didn't want to hear all the trolls on the internet, shaming me because of my background. That is the story that connected me to so many people. When I woke up the next morning, that article had gone viral. It had inspired people from all corners of the world, not only people who grew up in my situation, but a lot of fellow Australians who grew up with a lot of privilege, but never appreciated what they had. When they started to see the world through my eyes, there was a lot of gratitude that was invoked in their lives. So that's when I started to appreciate, to say, what if I embraced my narrative? I've spent all these years trying to fit into the Australian corporate culture and do things that, that would make me be perceived as a cool kid. What if I just, muted everything and became myself and embraced my story? And that was the beginning of this journey. I realized that there's so much power in us, sharing our own versions of our story in the most authentic possible way that we can, because it's very difficult for me to try to become Joe Thomas, because I can never be a better Joe Thomas than Joe Thomas. But there's no one who can be a better Philemon Zongo than Philemon Zongo from Mondoro. So that in itself just inspired me to share my journey. A lot of people wrote to me on LinkedIn and say, oh man, do you know that all these articles you are sharing, you could actually write a book because there's a powerful story here. So when I shared that on LinkedIn, I think I had maybe less than 300 connections. Within a month, I had more than 6,000. Right now, I've got almost 34,000 connections in a few years. So exactly that story that I avoided for for maybe 30 something years, I was maybe 36 years then, connected me to all these wonderful people. Some of them are here on this Zoom call, the people I connected via my story back then.
Wow. That's amazing, Phil. And that's the power of a story, isn't it? And I like that you have not waited until you have finished your business to share your story, because it's the journey as well that matters in terms of these stories. So I'm glad that a lot of people were inspired. Talking of obstacles, I want to come back to the obstacles, because you talked about your story and how it has inspired people. And now you're talking about the power of sharing that story. And I believe there are many people who would also want to share their stories, and maybe sometimes others have contemplated sharing it in a book. And they've thought, how do I do it? Now, you self-published your book. Just talk us through the challenges. You mentioned how long it took you to write this book, 3.5 years. And I'm sure, others want to share their stories and they've thought about it. But talk us through that challenge of actually putting the story on paper, the self-publishing piece.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's another great question. So like I said, this journey was very difficult. I underestimated the enormity of the task ahead of me. But fortunately for me, the passion to succeed and tell this story to the world, which, like I said, does not just represent myself. There's a lot of people here on this call who come exactly from similar situations. People I went to school with at Rio Tinto Mondoro, who are doing great things in London. So it's a story that represents so many people across the world. So the writing piece, like I said, initially I thought it was 6 months, but it took me more than 3.5 years. And I went through moments which one writer calls moments of frantic boredom, of angry hopelessness, of wanting to quit forever. I just wanted to walk away because I couldn't find the words. The dreaded writer's block gripped my mind and I couldn't find the words. But I stuck at it because my passion to succeed was, much bigger than the obstacles that I was facing along the way. So there's few challenges that I found. And, number one thing that I think, if you want to write a story, you're just going to stick at it, stick to the process. Don't worry about the end result. I never worry about how many books I'm going to sell. I get so angry when people say, how much money did you get from the 5 years of cyber resilience? Because I'm not doing this for money. I am just sticking to a routine. And, I've been writing every day for the last 6 years. I write every day. It's a non-negotiable habit. So anyway, that carried me through. When I sent the book to my editor, after peer reviews from great friends here like Evie, and she would share her own version of the story. So my editor, Benedict Foley, who helped me through the 5 anchors of cyber resilience, took the first draft, and what I thought was one of my best chapters, she deleted almost every word, and this was almost 12,000 words. So you can imagine, this had taken me months of research and reading Harvard Business Review everywhere. She deleted almost everything, and she told something that will stick with me my entire life. She said, stop telling people how to live their lives. Just tell your story. Don't venture into this self-help and tell people to be resilient or anything. Tell people what you saw, what you smelled, what you felt, and what other people say. Just stick to your journey. And as you can imagine, I thought I would be publishing the book 3 months from that time, and she deletes what I think is the most important chapter. So anyway, if you intend to write a book, and this is very important for anyone, especially if you're going through the self-publishing path, it's very important for you to get feedback from experts. And experts, I'm not talking of your girlfriend, I'm not talking of your boyfriend, I'm not talking of your friends, I'm not talking of people on LinkedIn, I'm talking of experienced editors. So anyway, the journey for me was just like that. My book went through maybe 4 rounds of professional edit. So I had 2 rounds of structural edit from Benedict. Then one of my editors is actually on this call, Paul Anderson, a great guy I've never met. He lives here in New South Wales. I hope to meet him one day. So he took my book through what's called copy editing, which means he goes through line by line and he trims it like he's trimming a young gum tree. And as you can imagine, when the book came back and you turn it into review mode, it looks red. So anyway, I work with Paul, really amazing guy. I appreciate your help. Then, everything is done. So then I found another editor who's here in Australia as well. She's called Emma Moylan, and she helped me with the proofreading. So I sent the book to her. It's as clean as it can up to that time. Guess how many changes she made to the book? 3,100 changes. So it was very important because I'd published my first book, I knew that it's very important to get, no matter how great your writer you think you are, it's important to get feedback from the experts. Then came the hardest bit, which is, would I get, my story published by a traditional publisher? Unfortunately, that's very difficult. It's a very closed industry, and I don't think a lot of people think a story matters because they just want to make money. So because my story is set up in rural Africa, fortunately, because of the democratization of this editing process through the internet and everything, I managed to self-publish my book. And I was very confident because I had built this tribe of 34,000 loyal followers or connections on LinkedIn, and I knew that they would support me. So when I published my book, it quickly rose to Amazon bestseller, and up to now, in the last 3 weeks, we have sold hundreds of copies. We just shipped more than about 100 copies that were pre-ordered, and these are people who are buying the book before they even read it. So I think you can tell, the entire 4 years, I got so much help from a lot of people. I went through a lot of discouraging moments, but I stuck at it because, I knew that my passion to succeed was more important than any obstacle that I could find. So I'll stop here.
Well, yeah. Thanks so much, Phil. Again, I can see, the thread, as you go through this, the thread of grit that you were talking about, because, yeah, I don't know how, it's so easy to give up when you're facing all those obstacles, not just the first time. This was your second book publishing. And so I can see that grit. I want to remind the audience, if you have got any questions that are coming to mind as Phil is talking, please put them in the chat and we will get to a point where we address them. But as you are talking, Phil, we see the obstacles. And we see this grit, the resilience, the hardened, attitude toward things. And I was actually thinking, yes, there are a lot of obstacles in the book that I've seen. And I saw as well the help that you were talking about, in terms of people that have supported you. Why the gratitude piece? So I can see the obstacles, I can see the grit, it's almost like obstacle after obstacle. And why the gratitude piece? Where is it coming from?
Wow. Okay, thank you. I'll be pretty quick. So one of my best chapters in the book is chapter 7, which is called "Running Away from Problems," and that pretty much narrates my journey when I ran back to school Friday evenings and ran back to school Monday mornings, and that was 23 kilometers away. Like I say in my book, I never really measured that distance, but our nearest bus stop to the township, Ruizi, was marked 23 kilometers away. So that's how I just go with that. And for me, that was very important because those runs were very difficult. My feet, every fiber of my being screamed at me to stop. But we just kept running. And I always tell people, one of the people who played a big part of my journey is my big brother Lancelot. Because when I left home, even when I was going to catch a bus, when occasionally I had 50 cents, which would take me from our place to the township, he would run with me to the bus stop. Because it was as dark as a pit. And I was so much scared of darkness because I'd been told all these crazy stories about tokoloshis and a lot of crazy stuff that I never encountered, but I was still scared of them. But anyway, so as I was running to school, 23 kilometers from my home, and maybe I was left with maybe 10 or 15 kilometers to get to the township, I encountered other kids that were running in the opposite direction, and they were running to the same village school that I was literally running away from. In as much as Rio Tinto was a much better school and was much closer to their villages, their parents could only afford to send them to the same school that I knew was devoid of hope that I was running away from. When I saw the world through the eyes of those kids, I was overwhelmed with a deep sense of gratitude. I realized that the life that I so much hated, I hated being in that dilapidated place where, my neighbors who were prostitutes brought in so many strange men. They were kicked in the gut. They had their braids literally plucked out of their heads by, clients who would refuse to pay them. I hated being in that place, but I realized that life that I hated so much, some boy or girl back in the village would die to have that life, because as long as I stayed on course, I could maintain my scholarship, and there was always a hope for a better future. I'm saying, I was about 15 years of age then, and I had maybe 15 more years of just pushing through obstacle after obstacle until I got to a better life. But that hope sustained me and gave me so much deep gratitude, because like I said, life is about perception. When I was coming, when I was driving to work this morning, I was listening to this hip hop song, which is called Juicy because I was just remembering my days at Goromonza. I said I'll play some song by Biggie Smalls. So he was playing Juicy. And I was laughing because he's complaining that life was very hard for him and he was eating sardines for dinner. Then I was saying, oh my God, if you give us sardines in the savannah, we would kill for sardines. So it's all about perception. The life that you think is crazy. We all migrated to Australia, but I encounter a lot of people who make a lot of excuses because Australia is very difficult. We are minorities. I get it. And I write about it in my book. I have had some racist experiences and stuff. But it's very important for us to see, the donut and not focus on the whole, because in every circumstance there are challenges. But that's why, for me, gratitude is a very powerful force. It helps me acknowledge what I have and maximize every chance that I have in life.
Wow. I love that donut analogy. I would love to see the donut rather than the whole. It's amazing, though, when you talk about perspective in terms of where we are and gratitude as well. So I really appreciate that. I've got a few more questions, but I want to give Evie a chance. Evie, because we've talked about the journey here. And Evie, you've been on the journey with Phil in terms of publishing and some of the things that he has done recently. Give us your version of the story, because he has talked about so many edits and other things, and I'm sure maybe he made the number bigger or smaller. I'm just joking. But tell us, what was your experience like? Just in a few minutes.
So thank you very much. I feel extremely honored to be invited to speak a few words here today. This journey was incredible for me, because it definitely was the first time that I have helped anyone to maybe shape or merge stories the way and I'm going to be humble about this because I didn't realize how much it really meant to Phil. But I think the story captured my heart and my imagination foremost, straight from the beginning. I read it now probably about 5 times in its different versions. And it was very clear to me from the beginning. I think when Phil mentioned about his post on LinkedIn that he deleted many times, that when I read it, I knew that this man has an extremely big and powerful story to tell that we can all learn from. So I think I might have been one of the people that have encouraged him to go down the path of writing more and knowing more, because it was extremely intriguing. I knew Phil from back at AMP when he was doing the security audits there, and I have to say he grasped my attention straight from the beginning by being the most gracious and kind and very stylish security auditor, and that's not an easy job. I think many of you are working in the field, so it can be extremely confronting and an ungrateful kind of work. So I was always wondering how he maintained such a positive attitude throughout this kind of rather ungrateful work. And I think when I read that post, this became a little bit clearer to me that he overcome so much more than I could ever imagine to get where he was, that I was hungry for more from the beginning. So when he have finally announced that he's writing a memoir, I jumped straight away on the wagon and say, I want to do illustrations for you, because I already started imagining things. And it wasn't very easy for me because I never visited any country in the continent of Africa. So the images had to come to me from Phil. It had to come to me from going on Google Maps Street Views, following these tracks when he was running to school, to try to imagine what the surroundings looked like and what was it like, and build that empathy to then capture the stories from the chapters. It was amazing to see how it was such a rough stone that have been polished into this sparkling and shining, beautiful, precious stone that is now the book. Because the story was very, very powerful and made me cry, and it made me laugh from the beginning, but it was just becoming so much more mature and so much more powerful, essentially, over the process. And I was never tired of reading yet another version and yet another version, because they were all amazing, and the emerging of that powerful message was coming very, very strong. So I think my biggest lesson from Phil is that we live in a world so many like instant gratifications, and we just want to have everything on our fingertips. And what he's telling us is that, you know what, the long run pays off by the dozens. And I keep having this at the back of my mind, because we can easily fall down the route of those instant gratifications, and to have this quickly and that quickly, but not really thinking of the long run and the goal ahead. And I think maybe even the illustrations was something for me that was rather new chapter. We both changed our AMP corporate positions into more creative positions in life. And I think he gave me the opportunity. I'm going to be forever grateful for being able to do this. And also to know that I can do and change, even though the world may not be telling me that this is the time for me, because we can be stuck in our own thinking. So I'm taking that lesson from Phil. So yeah, it was an extremely amazing experience for me.
Wonderful. And thanks, Evie, for being by Phil's side. You know, we see the product often, you know, when it's a finished product, and there are so many people in the process that Phil mentions in the book. And that's one of the things that I love, that he acknowledges in the book the people that supported the process. But not only that, that there are people that were going through worse things. You know, sometimes there's a temptation that what we are going through is the worst. No one has ever gone through what we're going through. But Phil acknowledges that this is a story of greed. But hey, there are many other people that have gone through maybe even worse things. And so it's really an important thing. And thanks for being part of the story, Evie. We really appreciate that. Now, I've got one question that I want to ask Phil. And then after Phil has answered, there is Michelle. Michelle is on the line, Michelle Gatsi. We want to tell her story, because this is also a product of the power of telling the story, because when Phil came into the story, it also impacted someone's life. So I'll give Michelle about 3 minutes to just talk about how Phil's story has impacted her. But first, Phil, there's a question that has come from the audience. So this is a question from Tafi Padare. It says, thank you for your incredible story, Phil. I wanted to find how these obstacles you encountered transformed your personal life, part of which you have shared already. But how did you also continue to keep your head up whilst facing them, especially because you were young and trying to establish yourself? Very good question, Phil. You were very young. You were 14 when you went out to rent. And how did you just keep your head up at that young age?
Yeah, thanks, tough. Really great question. I think it just came to, the place where I was coming from. When I left my village, I think in the summer of 1994, to live in Mbaira. I just made a promise to myself that I never wanted to come back the way I left the village. My goal was very simple. I wanted to, pass my ordinary level in one sitting, because back in the village where I came from, people set for, 3 years to get 5 O levels, because there were no books. The teacher maybe had one book that he kept to himself and read to the entire class and then took it back. It had several pages missing. So I determined from a young age that, for me to change my situation. And, there were so many people as well who hit me. My parents were very poor, but they were always there for me. One of the things that a lot of people ask me, so I'll sidetrack a little bit here. When you were writing about all these difficult challenges, was that confronting? I said no, because I dealt with it as I progressed with my life. I found a lot of humor in suffering. We had all these challenges, but we had so much fun in the growth point, and I write about those positive experiences as well, and that brought us a lot of happiness. And because expectations were very low, people are not happy in life because we expect so much from other people or from the government or from whoever. Our expectations were very low. I wanted to get 5 O levels, go to Harare. I got to Harare for the first time when I was 16 or 17. I was on my way to Goromo, and be able to buy myself a black pair of shoes and some white socks. That was my ambition for a long time, because I really liked shoes. But now, I can afford to buy myself a pink shirt and a pink pocket square. So, I'm very happy that, those obstacles gave me the drive to just keep going. And like I said, my father always reinforced this message. In Shona, what he said was, dzidzai kuitira kuti mangwana tigozove vanhu, which means very profound. Take your education seriously. So, later on in life, we also will be considered as human beings, because poverty, like I said, was a source of shame. So, those words and the support really carried me through many difficult moments.
Amazing. I like the resilience, especially at the young age that you're talking about, because I think our children or our young people need the same in this time as well. Because there's so much, that is coming at us, and it's important to have that resilient attitude. But I want to give Michelle 3 minutes to just talk about her story and the impact that Phil's story had on her. Michelle, I will let you introduce yourself, what you're doing, and how Phil's story had an impact on you. I'll give you 3 minutes to talk through that, and then I'll go to the other questions that have come from the audience.
Thank you very much. So grateful to have been given this opportunity to even share, my insight. Philemon has been obviously he's played a huge part, a huge role in my my life, my cybersecurity life, if you want to call it that. I guess I started my journey around this time last year. I was introduced to Philemon through my parents, and I was very interested in cybersecurity and entering this field. And my background is in criminology, so it's completely different to cybersecurity. But I was very determined to get in, and so I guess that's sort of where my journey started. And Philemon really pushed me to do things that I never thought I would ever do. Like, for example, I did a course, a cybersecurity course with Harvard Online, and I completed that course very successfully. And he pushed me to write a blog, and that's something that I had never ever thought I would ever do. And I thought, when he suggested that I do that, I thought, what am I going to write about? I'm brand new to this field. I have nothing to share. What do I, who's going to listen to me? But he just was so persistent, and eventually, I wrote. And he peer reviewed my blog, obviously, and I posted it, and it was a real success. And I posted it on LinkedIn, and I guess that's really got the ball rolling as well. And pretty much, I guess this is a very condensed version of what happened, but I received a few job offers not long after having completed the course and reading his book, The 5 Anchors, and obviously posting the blog and doing a lot of networking. And these were all his tips. And so, so I'll be starting a cybersecurity role very, very soon in February next month. And I can't believe that this happened, really. This was about less than 12 months. And that was all because of Philemon's support and guidance and mentorship. I'm so fortunate to have had him as a mentor. And I actually thought I should show you, this is my certificate that I received. So I'm so grateful to you, Philemon. Thank you so much for your support. I'm so proud of you as well. It's so good to see you succeeding, and you just keep going from strength to strength. So yeah, I really want to be like you when I grow up.
Fantastic, wonderful story there, Michelle, and all the best for you as well. And it's good to also share your story. This is how it gets the ripple effect when we share our stories. So thank you very much for that. Phil, I'm going to go back to the audience questions again, and there's one here on. Let me just see where I can look at the order here. I think there's one question, and it's talking. I'll paraphrase it. It's talking about how we can inspire our young children, especially when they have not gone through the same obstacles. I talked about my own daughter, my desire to always tell her how it was like and give her the book, and she read that. But do you have just a nugget? How do we inspire people that have not gone through the same things with our stories?
I think that's a difficult question, because I think as I conclude my book, I say, one of the biggest gifts of this entire journey is to see my kids, Nyasha and Mukundi. I can see them on the Zoom there with their pajamas. Nyasha and Mukundi, whom I call the 5-star general. For them to grow up in this area where, an unconstrained environment, and never be able to, one of my happiest days was when I took Nyasha to join the Big People School for the first time. And, she had a brand new uniform. I think she had 5 pairs of uniforms. She had, brand new shoes. She had everything. And when I looked back into my own first day at school, where I had no lunchbox, I had, some shorts that severely exposed my buttocks, and no shoes, no lunchbox. The only thing that I had was a teacher who tolerated no nonsense. So, seeing my kids grow up in such an unconstrained environment with opportunities as many as the sand of the seashore, I think it's a blessing in itself. That's, for me, was one of the biggest why I decided to write this book. So at least, they won't be able to go and live in Africa for a long period of time, but at least they can start seeing the world through my eyes, through the experiences that I went through. And it's not just for my kids. Your daughter read this book in maybe 15 hours. For me, that's one of the most incredible part of this journey, is to be able to inspire the young generations, and not only those that are growing up in this privileged environment, but my goal is to get this book in the hands of as many young Africans as I can, especially those that are in poor schools in rural Africa, because I want to unlock the power of possibility, to say, in as much as you're facing through all these obstacles, one of the best moments, sorry, I know I'm run out of time, but this is very important. One of the best things that happened to me was when I went to Harare to work, and the Zimbabwean economy was just collapsing. And, the lady who helped me from Germany, who paid my fees, and everyone who helped me, they were gone. So that situation forced me to dig within myself and find a solution. It took me 3 years of working, developing websites and everything, to get my visa and my ticket to Sydney, Australia, but I did it by myself. And I think that was even more powerful, because I discovered that a lot of, the solutions actually lie within us. It's in our mindset. The things that we can do as human beings are incredible. So that's my hope, that, as they read this book, they appreciate the privilege that they have here, and also the ones that are stuck in near impossible situations, they can unlock that belief system.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Phil. Before I ask the last question, I just want to ask people to switch on their cameras so that we can take that screenshot. If you don't mind, it will be just for a few seconds, and then we can ask Phil the last question. So I think people have switched on their cameras, Phil, and in 15 seconds, maybe we will take the screenshot. And yep, thank you very much. Well, okay, well done. That's done. Last question, Phil, and I'll give you 2 minutes for this, because I know you're passionate about your story. Actually, 1 minute, because you're very passionate about your story. But which are the obstacles? This was the second part of Rainbow's question. Which obstacles are you still facing right now? In your book, you talk also about the struggle to fit in. You dedicated a whole chapter to the belonging aspect. But which other obstacles are you still facing where you are now?
Oh, there's always obstacles, and I that question is very difficult, because life will always throw things at you. I don't know what's gonna come next week. Seriously, that's what life does. But it is the attitude that I confront those challenges that matters. Like I said, life is all about perception. For me, what's very important here, I think the key takeaway from my journey is, you've already said that, forget instant gratification. all these people sending me invites on Instagram saying they trade Bitcoins and they can make me rich, I just, instantly delete. So that's the number one. I am willing to play the long game. So what I realize is, the success that you achieve in life, it's not just about the hard work that you put in, but the sacrifices that you are willing to put in place for you to get to the end. So in other words, I call it, volunteering myself into suffering. And one of my business partners is here. So this is the journey that I'm embarking, building the Cyber Leadership Institute. We're very ambitious. We want to build a global cohort of 10,000 cyber leaders by the year 2025. It's a big mission. We're very ambitious. Going through that journey in the last 2 years has been maybe one of the most difficult phases of my life here in Australia, because I need to juggle. I've got 2 young kids. I've got some work. I work as a virtual CISO. But we also need to invest into the business. I want to drive a nice car. I want to buy suits. I like really nice stuff. But, that journey forced me to sacrifice and play the long game. Initially, I thought in 6 months we would have developed a big business, but it takes time. So anyway, those, the lessons that I got in life just helps me keep throwing myself into the deep end, do the hard things, and also be willing to play the long game. Nothing in life comes easy. The world owes me nothing.
Wow. I love that last statement. The world owes me nothing. Well, Phil, it has been a pleasure to hear from you and to hear your heart. So I guess when we read the book, we'll not just, be reading the pages, but we'll be hearing your heart as well. And I want to say thank you to everyone who has turned up. We don't take it for granted. Thank you for, putting your time aside to attend. Buy the book. There's more detail in the book than we could cover in this session. And also look up the links which we have put where you can buy the book and put your reviews on Amazon. Talk about it, talk about the story. And also when you read the book, if you need to share some, some of your feedback with Phil directly, if you need to, so that he can know the impact it's having. But we are on time, Phil. I want to give you 5 seconds to say thank you to everyone who has attended. Really, 5 seconds.
Yeah, I cannot thank you enough. The sacrifices you've made to, in terms of your time, and you know who you are. It's very difficult. I've consciously avoided calling people's names because I didn't want to end up forgetting someone who played an incredible part in my journey. But you know who you are. There are people whom I grew up with in Mondoro who are on this call. There's a friend of mine who lent me his black suit when I went for my interview at Deloitte. Oscar is here. All I had was an oversized green suit. And, so there's so many people who played a big part. Special thank you to Michelle. I know you give me a lot of credit, but I always say credit goes to the doer of the deeds. I mentor so many people. Your attitude stands apart. Evie, my friend from Poland, what a gift, stuck in my corner forever, throughout all those years. And all the friends whom I acknowledge in my book and I acknowledge on LinkedIn, I can't thank you enough. My closing remark is, just go out there and do the hard things. If you fail, it's perfectly fine. I've failed so many times. I lost my last fight, but here I am just picking myself and dusting myself and keeping going. And good luck with everything you aim to achieve in 2022. Thank you so much for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you everyone for attending, and we will close with that. Have a great evening, afternoon, or morning. Bye-bye.